This past weekend marked the first ever street race in the NASCAR Cup Series history. It was the first time in the 75 years of the sport that the top division of the series ran through the streets of Chicago. However, it was not the first time the series competed on a temporary road course. 69 years ago, the Cup Series circuit took to a 2-mile course assembled on the runways of the Linden Airport. It was a 50-lap race, and on that day, Al Keller would win in a Jaguar, marking the first time and only until 2008 that a foreign manufacturer would actually win the Cup Series. But this race would mark the only time the manufactured Jaguar would win in the series. So how did this happen and why? This is the story of how Jaguar won a Cup race in NASCAR. Our story starts before the founding of NASCAR, in a time where auto racing was nowhere near the priority.
December 7th, 1941. No American will ever forget this Sunday morning in Hawaii. Across the blue waters of Pearl Harbor, the Pacific Fleet rides serenely at anchor. There is peace and quiet in Honolulu. There's the hope for peace in the hearts of all Americans.
After the attacks on Pearl Harbor, the United States were entrenched in the infamous World War II. All resources were dedicated to the war, with New Jersey being headquarters to the Grumman Aircraft Corporation. It was a wing of General Motors, and they were tasked to construct the Wildcat and Avenger aircrafts for the U.S. Navy. Since the Wildcat wing of the aircraft manufacturing was in Linden, an airport needed to be built to streamline construction and to get them across the Atlantic as fast as possible. Through much of 1942, the airport was built, allowing for transport of various wartime materials. By the end of the war, with no needed use by GM, the airport was given to the town of Linden. Instead of renovating the area into some sort of housing or store area, they kept the airport in function. And soon, nearing 1948, the idea of road racing was offered to the airport. In 1949, the first sanctioned races occurred there. On July 9, 1950, this poster was made showcasing the entry list for the event. Along with the layout, you can also see all the makes that were in the race. Alfa Romeo, Jaguar, BMW, Crosley, and MG all participated. The layout is also shown previewing a fairly neat track layout, a hairpin, 2 90-degree corners, a unique front stretch, and assumedly the track was very wide due to the fact that it was on runways. The same minor events were held there all the way through 1953. But in 1954, NASCAR decided to go all in with the track. They were going to run an official NASCAR sanctioned Cup race there. And it marked the first time, besides running on the beach course at Daytona, that NASCAR would run on a road course. It also marks the only time that NASCAR's ever run on an airport. And a prize of $1,000 was set forth to the winner. The date was set to be June 13th, 1954. 43 drivers were going to officially take to the track, and the pole was won by Buck Baker. The race, just like the exhibition races before, held a lot of foreign manufacturers, and that was due to the sanctioning body of the event trying to put an international feel into the field. Therefore, they promoted the idea of a lot of foreign manufacturers to run. Jaguar and its 11 entrants were not the only foreign cars in the field this day. Most of the field was also made up of another 5 MGs and 2 Austin Healys. There was a Morgan in there as well, but also plenty of American car brands. The oldest car in the field to run was a 1949 Oldsmobile, piloted by a driver named Eddie Riker. He was from the nearby Boonton, New Jersey. He would be his 5th of 7 starts in his career, and that day he came home 11th, having only one better finish of 6th in his entire career besides this. That was his first career start. Eddie was able to race that day with NASCAR Hall of Famers like Buck Baker, Lee Petty, and Herschel McGriff. However, none of those Hall of Famers would win the race. Instead, Alva Keller, or just Al, would win after leading 28 laps in his number 4 Jaguar. He was one of the drivers urged to drive a foreign manufacturer, and the hope to inspire international feel worked. For the first time ever, a foreign manufacturer won in terms of a Jaguar. But publicity was very low for the event. Only 5,000 spectators showed up, and due to the little attendance, NASCAR no longer saw it viable, and for 1955, they did not go back to northern New Jersey. Keller, on the other hand, had won 2 races now in 1954, and while he never won again in NASCAR, he moved from stock cars to open wheel cars. His first start would be in 1955, in the Indianapolis 500. The only thing to note for him in that race was that he was sadly involved in the infamous crash that took the life of Bill Vukovich. It would be coming off of turn 2 where Roger Ward would lose control of his car. After Roger would hit the outside wall, Keller would come through and swerve to avoid the accident. He instead came around and hit the inside wall, sliding back up and collecting Johnny Boyd. Boyd with the impact will be sent into the exact line that Bill Vukovich was making coming off of turn 2 as well. Keller in his career would go on to finish runner-up in various AAA IndyCar races, most notably driving for Mary Holman George at DuQuoin in 1959. In that race he finished 7th. Keller, however, would lose his life in 1961 racing at Phoenix Fairgrounds. He would lose control of his car in turn 4 after hitting a rut and flip into a chain link fence, where he'd come to rest and be declared dead on scene. A popular yet untrue rumor that started about Al Keller is that he is the grandfather of Kurt and Kyle Busch. And I don't really know where this rumor started, but apparently this was very popular during the early 2000s. Keller was not the only notable driver in this race that had a very short stint in NASCAR. Another driver of note was that of Bill Claren, the 4th place finisher. It was his only Cup Series start. But Claren off track did much more for NASCAR than he did on track. He would help Bill France Sr. found the first ever sports car division of the sport in 1955. After that, he helped bring the American Formula Ford Association to prominence, turning the series pro for a short period of time. The notable drivers that were helped to get their start through the AFFA were that of Michael Andretti, Chip Ganassi, Scott Goodyear, and Chip Robinson. Claren is one of the last few living members from this race, along with that of Herschel McGriff. For the airport itself, it held motorsports races all the way up to 2010, hosting the Red Bull Air Race Championship Series. In between 1955 and 2010 though, it was just an airport, primarily used for local news helicopter stationing and private air use. The runways were reconfigured in 1998 to better use the space affecting the layout of what the track once was. However, with the recent move in the sport to try and get into more populated areas, perhaps Linden Airport could once again host a race. Holding events on airports are nothing new, and while Linden Airport only has a singular runway, some of the area around the airport could be used along with the space available there as well. As for the Jaguar XK120 that won the event that day, it never ran a NASCAR again. And the next time we would see a foreign manufacturer take the victory lane would be in 2008, when Kyle Busch would claim victory in a Toyota at Atlanta Motor Speedway. This race remains a forgotten but important footnote in NASCAR's history. It set certain precedents that we have seen fulfilled today. And while at the time it was a failure to draw attention, today the same idea drew the most eyes in half a decade. Perhaps someday NASCAR will again take to an airport. They'll speed down the runways aircrafts use for landing and takeoff. Until that happens, we'll always remember that one race at Linden Airport.